Hi class, it's Miss Martin. I'm happy to see you guys since I didn't really get to see some of you last week. I really enjoyed everyone who joined my Zoom call. Make sure that you join those Zoom calls on Wednesday and Thursday from 2 to 3. Uh, Moving forward with our reading, we have studied in the past immigration and the migration, the movement of people into Texas. I wanted to connect with that, so we are reading with that this week. So we are going to be reading a book called My Freedom Trip. My Freedom Trip is by Frances Park and Ginger Park, and it's illustrated by Deborah Reed Jenkins. It's about a child's escape from North Korea. So it's quite interesting. As we are reading, there are a few skills that we're going to be going over. One skill is inferences, making inferences. Remember, to make an inference, you need your background knowledge and the text clues, what the text tells us. So that's one skill we're going to be working on a lot. And with that skill, we're going to be working on vocabulary development. There will be some new words that I'm going to go over as we're reading. Okay, so here we go. Here's our first picture. Many years ago, when I was a little schoolgirl in Korea, soldiers invaded my country. The soldiers drew a big line that divided Korea into two countries, North Korea and South Korea. In North Korea, we could no longer speak our minds or come and go as we please. We lost our freedom. Many of us secretly escaped to South Korea, the Freedom Land. This is my story. What I'm thinking of where it says, the author said we could no longer speak our minds. This reminds me of in America. In America, it's pretty much the opposite. We have the opportunity to speak our minds, and we are lucky that we are able to vocalize our minds and our thoughts. And it's actually a part of the Constitution, a part of our Bill of Rights. We have the freedom of speech. So that is a great freedom that we have in America. That's what, and then in North Korea, she didn't have that freedom. So think about how lucky you are to be in America and have that ability to speak your mind. A peaceful sun shone upon my village in North Korea. Over rice paddies and pagoda roofs, on pink petals in ponds, and quartz stones on the ground. I walked home from school, down a path where flowering bushes lined the road, and a soft breeze carried butterflies. With what I'm just going to take a moment to talk about how they were able to create an image in my mind. The author used a lot of imagery. That means, once again, imagery is when an author creates an image in our mind. They told us what it looked like. She said with the pink petals and quartz stones lined on the ground. And then she even told me what it kind of felt like. A soft breeze carried the butterflies. You can feel that. It was a beautiful day. The sky seemed endless, and my eyes were soaring. From here, the world looked as free as the doves swiftly dipping into treetops. But one by one, my classmates had been missing from school. First, Uyami, then Inuk, then Mayuk, my best friends. They had left their homes in the middle of the night to cross the border to the Freedom Land. Now I walked alone. So we see that our author is having to walk alone to school. Very interesting point she brought up. She said, the world looked, if we look back here, it told us the world looked as free as the dove swiftly dipping into treetops. So what I'm wondering is, how exactly does a world look free? She said that the world looked free. And when you hear that word, that phrase, the world looked free, what do you guys imagine? You're using inference, you're using your background knowledge of what is freedom and what might that look like in your life. And then compare it to the text. She said it looked like doves flying freely. Then, one night, my father came to my room and gently woke me. It was so dark that I could not see his face. He spoke softly. Tonight, I must go on a trip. A man named Mr. Han will guide me to South Korea. He knows of a secret passage where I will cross the border at the shallow end of a river. Appa, I wailed, do not go. My father stroked my hair. His fingers were trembling. Soon, very soon, Mr. Han will return for you, and you will take your own freedom trip. Then will be your mother's turn. He said that he's going to take a freedom trip. What I'm wondering is, how does So feel? So her father's taking this freedom trip. What sort of inferences can we make about how So is feeling right now? Take a moment and think, how would you feel if your father had left to go on a freedom trip? But then he also told her, your turn will come. You will go on your freedom trip. Let's see what happens. But why can't we go together? I pleaded. Only one of us can go at a time, he tried to explain. Less people means less danger of being captured by soldiers. What was danger? It sounded as deep and as dark as a river. My father kissed my cheek, then left my side. He stood in the doorway for a long time. I will be waiting for you on the other side of the river, he promised. She said in this paragraph that danger, it sounded deep and dark and cold as a river. So she's comparing something, danger, to something else, something totally opposite than what we would imagine it as. We don't really imagine danger as a river. Danger can't really be just a river. So by her comparing those two things and saying danger was like, using the word like, that is called a simile. When we compare two things that are normally opposite, using the word like. Danger was like a river. Let's see what else happens with her family. My mother and I awaited word of my father. Every morning we sipped barley tea, wondering where he was. Every evening we played yut, still wondering. One evening, full of moon and warm winds, we heard a tap, tap. My mother dropped her yut sticks and rushed to open the door. So we can make that inference by the image and a little bit about our background knowledge of games. It looks like yut was a game that they would play maybe to pass the time, have some sticks with it. Let's see what happens with that knock on the door. A man in white peasant clothing stood in the doorway. On his back, he carried a big, heavy sack. Behind him, the sky was haunting. As the man stepped inside, I stepped back. He towered over me. Then his face broke into a gentle smile. Don't be afraid, So, he spoke. I am Mr. Han, your guide. I bring news of your father. My mother held her heart. Your father is safely settled in the Freedom Land, he told me. He's waiting for you. What's interesting is Mr. Han said that he's her guide. I wonder what exactly does a guide do? How is a guide going to help So through her journey? I also see that So said that the sky was haunting. Can the sky really be haunting? It kind of creates an image in my mind. What does that mean? Haunting. How can a sky be haunting? I think it means maybe something's going to happen, and she's maybe, when I think of haunting, I think of fear. Maybe the sky has created some fear within her. My mother quietly rejoiced, then began packing my knapsack with jelly candy, fruit, and clothing. Tonight, you go on your freedom trip, So, she carefully announced. Now quickly, you must change your clothes. Amma, I begged, come with me. She cupped my face and whispered, Do not worry. Her breath was as warm and soothing as tea. Mr. Han will return for me, and we will be reunited. My mother hugged me. I could feel her heart beating against mine like a dying dove. Be brave, so, she cried. Okay, so I see once again that there are two things that were being compared that might not normally be the same thing. When you think of, it said, let's look at this line right here. It said, her breath was as warm and soothing as tea. When we think of someone's breath, can it actually be tea? That doesn't really make sense. But when we think of how it's warm and soothing like tea, that makes sense. Tea is very soothing. Her breath was very soothing to her. So once again, the author was using a simile, using the word like to compare two things. Her breath was warm like tea. And then I also see she said that her heart was beating against hers like a dying dove. So that was another simile. They were comparing her heart to an animal's heart. Okay, so we are going to end on that. Tomorrow you will get to see what happens to So and her journey to the freedom land. I'd like you to think about really what does freedom mean, and how might her freedom be different than our freedom. I know a lot of you might be in your homes right now and you might feel very comfortable, and I think you guys should be grateful that you have that home and that you aren't like So having to leave your home right now. So just feel grateful that you have a home and you have a family right now to be with at during these times. That's also why I wanted to read something to make you think a little bit about what you should be thankful for. Make sure you do the exit ticket, and I will see you guys on Tuesday, and we will get to finish our story. Bye, guys.